morning. I like the fact that everyone is awake. I think I actually had a request for everybody that's in the room. I think we are a bit too scattered everywhere. If possibly, everyone could sit closer to the center of the seating area. Everyone can move down and be situated closer to the center. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth row would be the last row. So everyone who's down should move down. But everyone could, if they could be centered, please. Thank you.
Good morning. Morning, colleagues. Morning, comrades, distinguished guests, community partners, and friends. Firstly, you have a little program over here, but I am unfortunately not Professor Surajni Nada. I am Lee Shanik Udemans from the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice. I do bring Professor Nada's apologies. She is not well today. Well, she hasn't been well this week, and unfortunately she won't be able to make it, but you are in good hands with us, so please do feel very welcome. It is my privilege to welcome you here on behalf of the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice and the University of the Western Cape to this very important gathering, the inaugural Mandisa Monakali lecture. I also want to welcome you on behalf of our Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Academics, Prof. Monwabizi Kgalagala. Prof, can you just stand up so the people can see your face? It's actually under the auspices of his guidance and leadership that we are here today, so thank you very much for bringing us together, Prof. Kgalagala. Today we come together to honor the remarkable life and legacy of Mam Mandisa Monakali, a visionary leader, a fearless advocate, and a woman whose activism transformed not only her own community, but the national and global landscape of women's rights. Her work resonates deeply with the mission of the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice. Because at the center, we examine how religion shapes social and political life, how it can perpetuate inequality, but also how it can be harnessed as a powerful force for liberation, dignity, human rights, and dignity. Mam Mandisa's activism spoke directly to this intersection. She recognized that the struggle for women's rights is not only a legal or a political project, but also a moral and ethical one that demands attention to belief systems, cultural practices, and the spiritual lives of communities. As we gather here today, we do so on a significant date, the first day of the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. This global campaign challenges us to confront injustice with clarity and courage, and it calls on all sectors of society to stand firmly against gender-based violence. It is therefore fitting that we honor Mandisa on this day and in this place at UWC, a woman whose life's work embodied the spirit of this campaign long before it became a national and international program. As we reflect on her journey, we also reflect on the values that guide our work at UWC and in the Tutu Center. Justice, dignity, compassion, and the belief that we all have it within ourselves to bring about extraordinary change. Mandisa embodied these principles long before they became institutional commitments. Her work began at the grassroots, roots deeply in the experiences, struggles, and the hopes of women and children in her community, yet her vision reached far beyond local boundaries. She instinctively understood what the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice continues to try to embody and teach, that the struggles of communities on the margins are connected to global systems of power, and that meaningful social transformation requires both local action and international solidarity. As we honor Mandisa, I'm reminded of Archbishop Desmond Tutu's powerful words. They are right over there. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. These words speak directly to the heart of Mandisa's work. She refused neutrality. She refused silence. Her life was a testament to the conviction that justice requires action, courage, and unwavering commitment, especially in the face of gender-based violence. She understood and she taught us that change begins in the everyday commitments we make to one another, and that when these commitments are rooted in justice, dignity, and compassion, they ripple out towards the world, transforming communities, nations, and even global movements. In reflecting on the significance of today's gathering, it is important to situate our work within the broader commitments of UWC, as recently affirmed in a campus notice by our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Robert Balfour. He said that UWC, and I quote, has a proud legacy of being on the right side of history. And in the fight against gender-based violence, we are committed to aligning ourselves with all organizations that stand for justice in our society. For the University of the Left to be on the right side of history is one of the most treasured, treasured commitments and values of UWC, and we are proud to share that with you. These words remind us that the struggle for justice, dignity, and the protection of women is not a symbolic gesture, but an ongoing institutional responsibility. This commitment resonates powerfully with the life and work of Mandisa. Her activism was a resolute stand against gender-based violence, rooted in the lived realities of women and children in her community, yet it was connected to national and international movements for women's rights. By honoring her legacy here today, we echo our university's stance that we must stand with all those who challenge injustice, defend the vulnerable, and those who work tirelessly to dismantle systems of violence, especially those that are racist, patriarchal, and capitalist in you. So today, and moving forward, may Mandisa's legacy strengthen our commitments and remind us that the work of justice is both collective and ever enduring. Thank you so much for being with us today. So not only am I doing your welcome, you'll hear a lot from me today, I'm also your program director, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Ella Mangisa, the Executive Director of Elita Labantu. Welcome, thank you.
Good morning. Distinguished guests, but let me first greet the leadership of the University of the Western Cape, our colleagues, our partners, and friends. Good morning. It is both an honor and profound privilege to welcome you to this inaugural lecture of Mandisa Monakali, hosted by Elita Labantu in partnership with Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice, as well as the University of the Western Cape. Today we gather in a space of scholarship, reflection, and remembrance, a space that allows us to critically engage with the life, work, and enduring influence of one of South Africa's foremost feminist activists, Mandisa Monakali. Mandisa Monakali was more than an activist. She was a theorist in practice, a woman whose lived experience shaped a distinctively African feminist framework grounded in ubuntu, community resilience, and justice. From her early work in the township of Kukuletu, she recognized that the struggle against violence against women and children could not be separated from the broader fight for human rights, social justice, and equality. Her establishment of Ilita Labantu in 1989 was both an act of resilience and a declaration of a possibility that an African woman could build an institution rooted in compassion, knowledge, and transformative action. Through her leadership, Ilita Labantu became a living classroom where theory met practice and where women and communities learned to heal, organize, and lead. It is therefore fitting that we convene this lecture within the walls of a university, a site of intellectual inquiry and critical engagement. This space allows us not only to honor Mandisa's contribution, but to interrogate and expand upon her feminist prefix, how grassroots activists inform knowledge production, how community experiences shape policy, and how local movements contribute to global feminist discourse. The theme, fitting, from grassroots to global, challenges us to consider how her legacy transcends geographically, how a movement born in the township has influenced global conversations on gender equality, peace building, and women's rights. This inaugural lecture is therefore not only a commemoration, it is an intellectual and moral continuation of Mandisa's life work. Through this platform, we seek to embed her philosophies within academic dialogue, policy development, and community practice, ensuring that her ideas continue to inspire both activism and scholarship. As we engage today, let us do so with the same humility, conviction, and defined her leadership recognized that knowledge, when grounded in empathy and lived experience, becomes a tool for liberation. May this lecture serve as a remembrance, a renewal, and an affirmation that the work of justice is not only done in the streets, but also in lecture halls, research papers, and classrooms where ideas become instrumental to change. So I welcome you all, and thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ella Mangisa. Colleagues, we now have a short audio and visual presentation for you. Our colleagues who are controlling the lights, would you like to just control the lights first? So this documentary is in the works, right? And you're getting a sneak peek. It's on the life and legacy of Mandisa Monakali. It honors her immense contribution towards advocating for the rights and dignity for women and children in South Africa and on the continent and across the globe. In this brief screening, you will hear voices from her fellow comrades who have also worked with her along the years. And it's a celebration of this icon and the continuation of her legacy. So please do enjoy this. It will run for about 9 minutes and we'll continue the program, but please do enjoy this preview. Thank you.
When we're fighting against apartheid, we used to know who's our enemy. When today we don't know who's the enemy. We used to know who's our enemy.
Came in
today
in the breach of things when women really needed protection.
We live in a society whereby you don't care. People don't respect the law. We live in a society whereby you don't care. People don't respect the law.
Ukhona umhlali ovileyo phakamani bahlali isazela siphi iphi inimba
I was born in Claremont, but during the Group Areas Act, we were moved from Claremont to Newlands to Retreat to Kukuletu. So I am a Cape Townian. I studied, I did everything in Cape Town.
Mandisa ukhulela kubantu benkonzo, abazali bakhe yayingabantu abahlonipheke kakhulu abanesidima.
I believe that my parents were true Christians. Their beliefs and the way they used to do things. And it helped us, it helped me in particular to be who I am because of those beliefs.
Ubaba wethu ke bekancokole ngepolitics naye. Athethe ngolibumba ngobani esingabazi thina. Kanti umanesikha umandisa pha kubaba ngexesha singayazi bathina naye umanezimela esiya kwezi meeting.
It's only very late when I got to understand by this one, MK, for her to be able to drive their agenda, she had to be involved at grassroots level. And it found a space for her work through the violence against women.
Unale vision anayo. She wants to start lento kwi-community abantu abamnyama. So yandi mnontombe enhle nonkonyane sa joina uMandisa. Sihambe ke like sibheke kwi-meetings. Like we want to meet group of women abanalento nalembono uMandisa ke azenayo. And then ke xa sibona hayi noko ngoku iyaza into uMandisa ubani igama lolisana. Then I came up with the name. Ngoba look Mandisa lento ozenayo ngohlobo ke lilitha labantu.
The-establishment ye-Lita was kind of saying, this is another home for us to continue with the struggle through fighting violence against women.
It was actually very interesting for me. It was a very gentle person, but very forceful and very strong. So in a way she was like, hey, this very cheeky woman of... and men, you know, some of the comrades used to fear her. And when I was seen to be close to Mandisa, guys used to say, him, that woman who killed me, it's finished you. You're friendly with that stubborn woman, you know. What did she do to you?
In 1980, sadibana noMandisa lo wasiqokelela ke singabefundisi. Isikakhulu uMandisa usebenze nesifundisi salapha Western Cape.
Then the organization grew from those workshops zabefundisi because abefundisi baphuma nabo empowered okokubana naxa beshumayela bacaphule apha because nasezibhalweni zikhona indawo kwakunocatshulwa kuzo ezizakomeleza omama bathe balanto baviolated sexually and otherwise.
From the 90s, when new legislation was being planned, Ilitha Labantu played a significant role by giving inputs and were able to analyze whatever was written by policymakers in the country, the gaps where women's issues were not highlighted, you know, to the best of their ability.
One needs to understand there's no legislation without people. Before we talk of legislation, the legislation will come. Lita is here to represent people because we're dealing with issues on the ground every day.
Before we had the women's tent, we had Ilitha Labantu coordinating women, even across the other countries. It was Mandisa in particular who had brought us into contact with the women of Kenya, I think, with the women of Rwanda, and therefore the women's strain.
I want to thank Ilitha Labantu for the last 30 years. You have been at the forefront of fighting to expose and end violence against women. You started when there was very little support, because you remember in the time when we were fighting against apartheid, ending apartheid was everything. It was like everything else we can sacrifice, including the fact that there was gender inequality and the fact that women were living with violence. This issue was not in the forefront, maybe to some extent gender equality, because we were activists in the liberation movements also fighting for women's struggle, but violence against women was just not at the forefront.
Mandisa came to me and said, Sheriff, I've got a problem and I don't know whether you have time and we can work together. I've been approached by a lot of women and even some community leaders who are saying that there are women victims of apartheid, violence, very serious violence, and nobody is talking to them. And yet, nationally, the TRC, even internationally, there are all these people who are telling their stories and getting assistance, and people are listening to them. But there are also other victims that have had horrendous, violence meted on them. And nobody's saying anything to them.
Ilitha labantu lilona alasincedayo kwindaba yegugu lethu 7 kaChristopher. Kuba ke mina ke ndizawuthetha ngoChristopher lona wam. Nguyena ndawo eyasincedayo kuba ke ukuze sidibane nezi-TRC nabanye abantu yasisa kwezi ndawo kuzo zonke sikwazi udibana nazo yeyilitha labantu.
Sinalanto ukuthi ebantwaneni bethu nyamezela umuntu yanyamezela emzini kanti loo nto le ayikho right. Yabona ndibona apha kum ayikho right loo nto le. Umntana uzile wazokhala kuwe esemzini akhe, mamkela umntana akho, mkhuphe kulaa nto akuyo. Yabona nazange ndikwazi umkhupha kulaa nto endixelele uba andimfuni lo mntu lona undiphethe kakubi.
When Ilitha Labantu started with the first Take Back the Night march, and we introduced it to the country, issue as Ilitha was not about the students who were murdered in Canada, was the night belongs to us as women also. We have the right to walk at night. I started the organization because I was also a survivor of violence against women. And through my experience, I realized that something should be done to fight the scourge of violence in the township.
We're saying isikhukukazi, isikhukukazi. She protect her. She does that. And hence I call her the warrior of love.
As Ilitha Labantu, we have managed to take Ilitha Labantu, take it from locally to internationally, where we use a slogan saying, think locally and act internationally. Enemy.
Ilitha labantu.
Thank you so much to the organization for sharing that preview with us. I think that it's safe to say this is going to be an iconic documentary, and we look forward to seeing the full and finished project, and I hope that we will be able to bring it to UWC for a screening with the Desmond Tutu Center and with our Vice Chancellor's office as well. I think, can we just take another moment to give a round of applause to the producers. And so before we start our lecture today, I think Ella said something really important about, the work of justice not only taking place in the streets, but also taking place in the lecture halls. And I love us building this bridge between academia and activism, even though there shouldn't be a binary. But some work that we take very seriously in the Tutu Center which is a research center here at UWC. And something that we continually try to recognize is that this work of justice also takes place through and in our bodies as women. So it's not just mind work, it's not just heart work, it is literally work that we do every day with our bodies. We exist in our bodies in a country where we perpetually feel unsafe and unfree in many ways, right? So we want to recognize that really complex way of being, and in doing so, we move between activism, academia, but also the arts. And it's my pleasure to call on my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Thandi Gametse, who's also a senior researcher in the Desmond Tutu Center. And Thandi is going to ground us in this moment, and I think probably the most human of ways, through rendering a poem and then lighting a candle. Thereafter, we'll introduce our speaker and get to the lecture. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. This poem is called Every 3 Hours, and it's by Koleka Putuma, a South African poet. This country buries us before we are born, calls us by our obituaries before it calls us by our names, makes us women with nervous conditions with their guard up, law enforcement with a broken system with too much power, power in authority with guns that gun down their spouses, telephones with missing person details with no follow-up, garages with toddlers who should be in school, vehicles with evidence with no power to prosecute, post offices with weapons, shopping malls with kidnappers, bathrooms with carnage, a carnage with no expiry date, clubs with druggers, alleyways with not enough light, and even with all the light, you would still not be safe. Ubers with panic, Taxify with paranoia, walks with tasers, in groups, in public, in places you wouldn't think it could happen. Graves with girls taken too soon, too brutal, too horrifying to name, to document, to find, to mark as danger zones disguised as safe spaces with murderers, murderers who are husband material, schools with pedophiles, pedophiles with degrees in working with children, lecture halls with molesters, terminals with predators, construction sites with men old enough to understand no. Churches with men who use your prayers for safety to get you on your knees with your arms raised. Every 3 hours, one of us does not make it. This country hangs our dignity at half-mast, waves our bodies as lessons to be learnt, as moments that should teach us something, as modules, tests, experiments. My existence is not for your teaching. To dislocate my mother's throat 6 feet under and compensate her grief with scholarships and amended policies that have gathered dust before they have even been drafted. This country buries us before we are born, calls us by our obituaries before it calls us by our names. We're going to light these candles in commemoration of women that have been killed. May they rest in power, and may we complete the work of struggle until we are all liberated and all freed, and also in remembrance of those that continue to face gender-based violence in this world today. The struggle is not over, and may we continue the work to struggle for a world in which women are safe, women and children are safe. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for sharing that with us. Thank you, Tandi. Know that those are not easy words to speak. This is not an easy place to be. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Tozama April Maduma of the board of Lilitu Labantu, but also one of our own from UWC. I hope I can still say that, Dr. Tozama. And Dr. Tozama will introduce our honorable speaker today. Thank you so much.
wonke ezandleni zabantu akuna muntu ophethe umhlaba ngayedwa umhlaba wonke ezandleni zabantu akuna muntu ophethe umhlaba ngayedwa ayesaba magwala sebefuna kubulelwa ngabantu ayasaba magwala
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Mine greetings to the leadership of the University of the Western Cape, my alma mater. It gives me a great pleasure to be back in this auditorium, right? It brings back memories. When you talk of UWC, mid-90s, this was the hub where the exiled movement, we had leaders coming to this very auditorium to address us as students. Now, coming back on this memorable occasion to mark the very first lecture, Kamama Mandisa Monakali, it's a great honor. It's a great privilege. Mine really is to introduce our guest speaker. I'm delighted to introduce her, a very remarkable woman who has made a mark in the political landscape of South Africa. But in my way of introducing her, I had to do a bit of research on her, right? On the 16th of December, 1961, the military command of the African National Congress issued a leaflet announcing the formation of Umkhonto weSizwe. In that leaflet, the statement in that leaflet read as follows: "The time comes in the life of any nation when there remains only two choices, submit or fight. That time has now come to South Africa. We shall not submit and have no other choice but to hit back, by all means within our power, in defense of our people, our future, and our freedom," close quote. This was a clarion call by the liberation movement to all to kind of join the fight against apartheid. The person I'm going to introduce heeded the call in the 70s when, as a student, she joined the liberation movement. Born on the 25th of December in Huhudi, a township near Vryburg, in what was now the Northwest Province, Thandi Ruth Modise was the youngest of the 6 children in her household. Rooted in dignity, discipline, and deeply held values. Her father, Ndate Franz Modise, was a worker and a committed ANC activist. But it was Thandi's mother, Me Kilobegile Mogale Modise, who would become her earliest and most enduring inspiration as a woman of unwavering strength, principle, and grace. From her mother, she learned not only how to stand firm, but how to move through the world with purpose and integrity. From an early age, Thandi witnessed the harsh realities of apartheid, the threat of forced inclusion into the so-called homeland of Bophuthatswana, the fury of police presence, and the silencing of dissent. Of course, in 1976, when Thandi was still a teenager, she abandoned formal higher education during the nationwide student uprising, which was a turning point that would set her life on a path of resistance. Fueled by injustice she saw, she crossed into exile to join Umkhonto weSizwe, the armed wing of the African National Congress. I must pause actually to reflect on the fact that Thandi, you'll have to bear with us because we know many of you do not like to be spoken about. You don't want us to sing your praises. But for us, we often complain as women. We complain as women that our histories are not documented. Please bear with us. We complain that our histories are not documented. And this is the only opportunity that we get to talk about you, talk about what you did for this country. For I think at times, we do write our stories out of history by being too humble at times. But I just want to ask just to bear with us, just a minute, just a little longer, to just reflect on this very, really colossal woman who has led in various capacities in our country. I'm going to limit my biographical sketch to just the highlights of her kind of achievements and what she has done. I know a lot of you don't like Mebatabile. You don't want to be spoken about. You don't like to sing your praises, but please bear with us, allow us to do that. Some of her milestones: she served as a member of parliament from 1994 to the present, where she served on Defense and Public Accounts Committee. She also served as the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Joint Standing Committee on Defense as well, between the years 1998 and 2004, where she was responsible for overseeing transformation within the South African Defense Force. She became the Speaker of the Northwest Provincial Legislature from 2004 to 2009. Also became the Premier of the Northwest from 2010 to 2014. Her focus there was on governance, to ensure that there is efficiency in governance. She became the Speaker of National Parliament from 2019 to 2021, where she was overseeing the national parliamentary affairs with integrity and impartiality. She became Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. That is my favorite, right? Because in my little archival research, I discovered that part of her military training was in topography, right? She can study the landscape. You never get lost with her in the jungle, right? So she served in that capacity as Minister of Defense and currently the Chancellor of the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. where she serves as ceremonial head, inspiring a new generation of ethical leaders. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome May Thandi Modise.
Wathinta abafazi. Wathinta abafazi. Wathinta abafazi. Wathinta uMandisa. Comrades, Ella has spoken to me very strictly. Uthi kawenzi lecture. I don't think I'm going to do that. Because I had no idea when I last hugged Mandisa at the last inauguration ka Comrade Cyril Epitori, that was the last hug I was giving my friend, my comrade, my sister. I had no idea. I actually commented on her loss of her. Wathi uyabazi labantu bandiqinayo. Ayanditsala man. I commented on the nice slim figure. Wathi Chocho, you want to look good alone, follow wish. I had no clue that that was my last time I see Mandisa. The last time I spoke to Mandisa was, in fact, a few hours before. La sisi endifonela. Etukum uvuka. Has anybody called you? And I say, what about Vuke Tongwe? And she said, I've been called to tell you. The last call she had given me was, ndifuna ukukuxelela ukuthi bendifile. Ndabuya. I just wanted you to know that. And she dropped the phone. I couldn't call her back. So there is, for me, no closure. There is, for me, no friend, no sister, no comrade, no person who we did naughty things together. There is, for me, no longer the woman I would walk with. Kwamkhulu, looking for clothes. There is, for me, no aunt I could call on. Xa bendixakile amantombazana wam ndithi khama ndikhawuthethe naba bantwana. So for me, this is not a lecture. This is me coming here to say goodbye to Mandisa Monakali. I don't know exactly when I met Mandisa. I only know that I came here in 1989, a few weeks after I was released from jail. Ndikhapi uMasisulu, because she was visiting Tatu Walter that week. But there was a memorial, Ika Ashley Creel. And she wanted me to attend that memorial. So after, that's where I met Uwo Squatcher for the first time, because he was one of the people on stage talking in that occasion. I stayed over. And amongst the people I met was not just Indy and Mam Mildred Lycia. Had driven 2 weeks, the two women, driven, not men, two women, Indy, Mam Mildred, had driven from Cape Town to Vryburg to see me. So after that memorial, which made us run into the night, La Ekapa, because that memorial did not finish in peace. Amapoisa afika. Somebody grabbed me, and that somebody was Untwanambi. And she ran, Dandi slender, but I can tell you, one day Cindy saw Untwanambi that day. The next day, I was to meet the first women, Basekapa. And I went back. But I think we really made contact in Mandisa because I got married to an ex-Robben Islander. So, Dizobalisa. And at some point, I went on the Felicia Mabuza Sattel train. And I said, the hero of Robben Island, my husband, I cannot endure domestic violence. And then so Mandisa reached out and said, welcome to the club. When I moved to Cape Town as an MP, we now bonded. Because as far as we are concerned, we're now working together to make sure that especially the women younger than us would never stay in relationships, in marriages, where they were abused either by their partners or by their in-laws. We were very clear that the empowerment of a young woman, a girl from this age, was to make sure that this South African society where we live would begin to produce wholesome children who respected both genders equally. We would produce young women who could stand on their feet and be whatever they wanted to be. We would produce daughters who stood up anywhere to speak their mind, to be corrected if they have to, but never to feel inferior to any other human being. Lankani yasidibanisake. The second thing that made us really bond was jazz. I think Utataka Mandisa had no brother wake, had a good collection of jazz. So, sahlanganiswa ile nto futhi. So we started working together. I had been forced to join the Women's League as I stepped out of prison. Mamlangeni had sent poor Mam Zolete ngeblouse. Danxikiswa ndiphume ejele ndingakafiki ekhaya. So I was sucked into this organization which my mother was a member of from the 50s. Because as Ruth left Vryburg, bayochisa mapasi ngapha, Maslodi led the women of Vryburg, bayochisa mapasi lapha eVryburg. So I was fine. I was fine. I had actually walked into MK, where we were denominators. We were called Abu Shi, Abu Female. And I remember, because one of the bad things that Masludi had done, my mother, was to start me from kindergarten to high school into Catholic schools. So my immediate response was, I am not a goat, I'm not a she comrade. I am equal to all the men who are here. And some of them are still alive. Joel Nechitenje is still alive, who were in the same detachment. I was a political commissar, and I thought I would be equal to any man who was a commissar in that train. Because that member of the ANC Women's League, Umaslodi, who had been abused in her marriage, had made sure that her children stand up and are equal. I'm trying to produce children, Ella, who will do justice to the teachings of my mother, but also to my teachings and Mandisa. Because she has been present in the lives of all my children. But we need to talk about this woman. We need to talk about her excitement when I was in the Joint Standing Committee of Defense and Defense. We need to talk about excitement Mandisa when there was a temporary committee, a parliament, another committee that was formed. It was a joint ad hoc committee to rectify ISIDO in preparation for that International Women's Conference. And so we started really interacting. Mandisa, knowing that she's on the ground with the civil society, Tina with legislation in parliament. We found ourselves together. In fact, I was the last one to leave, but Tabile, you were in the delegation, Nabo Lulu. Lulu was chairing the joint committee Yabafazi in parliament. And that is because as we came into parliament as women of the ANC, we had already, remember the black on black violence? Remember, Batabile, that it took us, the women, to go and have a chat with the women of the IFP. It took Ubatabile Law and Dikapa to go to the IFP Women's Brigade's conference to go and talk to them. It took Faith, Faith and I, the guts to go and tell Ukachabutele Zuguti, we are tired of burying. Let's stop this killing. And so we started merging. So by the time we were going to Beijing, we had a structure, which brought all of us, Women's Coalition, which brought all the women together because we did not want to the World Conference in different sections as South African women. We had started Nabuzo challenging the defense, the military, because where we came from, we did everything. Before I was re-infiltrated here, I had been the first one, Bangakjel, to shoot the cannon. Kingazuguti, is it going to ricochet and kill me? But it was a matter of, I joined here at the same time as these boys, and nobody's going to tell me I can't make a bomb when the offer is there to make a bomb. And it wasn't stupidity. It was about asserting the role that was being denigrated. The only woman I knew, there were two women I knew at that time who had been in MK. It was Jackie Sleepy. no, Jackie Sidibe, who later married Joe Modise. It was Ruth Mompati. Those two women we knew. We knew in the camps that our mother was Umamposh. Whatever we needed, she would struggle to get. But we also knew that amongst us, group of 76, Nohona Lebo Mavis Ndlovu, she died, Dr. Ndlovu. There were women who came in who could not read and write who were amongst us. And my respect to Mavis Ndlovu is that then we started identifying the young women amongst us. Then lessons started to make sure that the women would be able to compete equally in the Ikolama camps or ANC. Then we challenged the notion that women could only do duty emini and not ebusuku. And then we started. So when we came to Parliament, it was like, Merin usixelela ukuthi women can't go into the Air Force because banemfundo. Usixelela ukuthi women can't be pilots in our fighter jets because what? We started then. Bomandisa Bali on the civil society, Tina pushing it from Parliament. When we went to Beijing, Mandisa was there in the civil society. And the interesting thing is that we had a president called Winnie Mandela, then deputy minister, who went also as part of the NGO forum, if you remember. Because even when you think you are political, you are empowered, you are educated, women do, other women down. And until we confront this thing and begin to understand that you can only be equal as a woman when the other woman also feels equals and is as equal as you. And that is what we were trying to do. So whatever it is that we were pushing within the ANC, within the Women's League, through the ANC Women's League, we tried to push within the society of South Africa. I do remember that Women's Caucus, we had issues. We had issues because all the political parties had brought their own, and it was our work to make the other party women unlearn. And understand that when it came to it, the ANC Women's League would take the ANC on the issues of women. So we went, chair of the CEDAW was the last one to leave the country. And all of us who were backbenchers ended up, except Uzu, ended up in the NGO forum. By the time I arrived, there was a crisis. That's when we experienced the ability of Mandisa Monakali to come to the rescue. Mamwini was sick. Babe tati malizabo abo batabile nabo lulu and tried to get Chinese doctors, and blood pressure was just going. Didn't understand what the Chinese doctor was saying. So Mandisa, when we thought, uzawufela la nomzam. Mandisa approached, that's how we met the Queen Mother. Mandisa goes to the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother makes one call to the Black Caucus in America. They sent not only just a plane, they sent a medical team. Winnie was rescued, Winnie was brought home. By the time we came here, unomzamo wayiphilile. Now, you are speaking about somebody who, even today, we have never taken seriously. You are speaking about a Mandisa who could easily make connections. You are speaking about a Mandisa who usisimanto engifake ngenhloko Bathabile and sent me in her stead to Rwanda to go and deal in the week genocide. And I had to stay there and help and push these Rwandese women to bury the dead because kwakunuka estratweni. And later on, out of the blue, Mandisa was in Rwanda. And again, we found ties. It's not just about domestic violence against women. It is about the rights of women and children. So, when the Beijing process started, there was now this woman who had an organization that was running. There was, yes, the machine yeka ANC Women's League to mobilize. But we didn't just want to mobilize the women who had sympathy to the ANC. We wanted a national voice, and through Ilita Labantu, through Mandisa, we got that. We mobilized because even at that time, you will remember that Mandela sent troops to the DRC. We got interest in the welfare of the women and children in the DRC, and somehow Mandisa had a line. I went there because by that time, I'm deputizer Utoni, but I led the delegation that first went there to look at how our troops were doing the DRC. We had this connection in Rwanda. We then started getting Usizale when she started calling us in. Until Mandisa ati, you know what? Mnandiza ukulisa le Ilita Labantu. We will have a footprint. It can't just be a Western Cape thing. And therefore, Ilita Labantu's footprints spread throughout the country. We then were called in. You remember the Burundi story? You remember the women's dialogue, Yako DRC? We worked. But there were times when Usizanele would send us Ivory Coast, Uliwa. We ended up having a foothold in Nigeria. Because I was a parliamentarian, we ended up having access to the women back in Nigeria. It was easy to get to Swaziland, where things were not well also. So the network grew. So in preparations for Beijing, Comrade Bathabile was the secretary. Mandisa approaches us. The other women will come to South Africa and you know, but first we went to Senegal. We went to Kenya. And I remember in Senegal again, Comrade Winnie was leading us. Quite interesting experiences. We'd get into a taxi and it rains and we'd be given an umbrella. And Mandisa used to think it was quite novel. They can carry the umbrellas everywhere. But what these little trips of women who were low under the radar did was to help us connect with women in these different countries. So when we were preparing to host here, Mandisa approaches us, Nabo Bathabile, and says, but it can't be just us. Why Singezi with the women's peace train? Remember? And I don't think most of the leadership in South Africa took that train seriously. All the way from Bokenya Ntontoni, get stimela. It did happen. That Park Station, when that peace train stopped, kwakushushu. I'm saying that this woman's footprint was all over. When there were issues in Swaziland, she said, Masi and that hamba ntombi. Because at least you've got drops of royal blood. Bazakumamela kakuhle amaswati. Because as politicians, we are failing to make the leadership of Swaziland understand that they can't just choose candidates, like they must allow the nation to choose. So we started interacting there. One an MP, one a civil society woman's leader. I don't think I understood Mandisa kakuhle until we started going to the UN meetings. Because I don't know, Ella, what is happening there. But your mother, the civil society gatherings were led by Ilita Labantu Mtanam. In civil society meetings, that tent would be filled because the women would all come to the stand. Ilidwa Mandisa Monakali Ilita Labantu. Topics that talk to the issues of women all over would be discussed there. We would find a way, Okuti, in the formal UN gathering of women, whatever has been discussed in that tent, filter into the resolutions, Zabafas, there. The defiance of women to insist that the peacekeeping forces must have a third, being women, came out of the Rwandan situation where the peacekeeping forces were raping women. So we stood up. Became very unpopular in South Africa because ngubani wena Thandi uhamba uthi. And we had to do those things because it was important for us, not only to talk about women's equality in South Africa, it means nothing. If you cannot convince the AU, and by the way, we've always been proud, Ms. Batabil, that power was actually formed by our mothers before the men of Africa started the OAU. Did you know that? That our mothers from this country were part of that formation of that body. And therefore also using power, especially when Batabile was the secretary, to integrate the views of women of this continent became important. So you can't talk about Umandisa and not talk about this contribution. We can't look at you young women, I'm told the time is up, without wondering whether the children we have produced will carry the baton that we took from our mothers with the same agility and determination. We wonder whether maybe we have, maybe because Abu Mama Betu baby hlupeka, that's why they were strong, and that is why they made us stronger. Maybe we are too soft on our girls. And therefore, we need to start saying that the women of the future, when South Africa is going into this madness to come up, there was a time when we united the white woman and the black woman here in the 90s. There was a time when we forgot there were colored women and Indian women, that we saw only South African women fighting for the same thing. When South Africa is going to hell to stand up as South African women. When do we start saying it is time for us to fix our country? Niye kukuteketisa the boys you bring into this world to continue abusing women. Asiyeke loo nto. We had a discussion once, Mandisa, whether if in equal South Africa, it was only right for a man to have 2 wives and 3 wives, and not for women to choose as many partners as they wanted. But you see, we didn't agree in the end, because Mfundisi uMandisa wandibuyisela phaa kulaa nto yokuthi we don't need to have many partners, because remember kaloku ukuthi uThixo waqala ngendoda wamlalisa wenza thina the better model. So thina we don't need more men. Thina we are the gender that must bring people together. I think if we want to give any honor to Mandisa, we must make Ilitha Labantu stronger and more enduring. We must continue her dream, Ella, to carry on in all the provinces dealing with issues. But Ilitha Labantu is not just that instrument to deal with into Zabafas. And even when women go crooked, we must be able to say, Nimosha is dimase to niasmosha, and deal with the crooked ones. So that Ilitha Labantu is not seen as protecting women simply because sinamabele. I would say that we need to start really growing healthy South Africans. But Dikumbula, in my last point, Dikumbula, we were at the AU, and the peer review mechanism was being discussed. And Mandisa looks at me and she says, Idini lendo, utini? And I say, we can't talk, Mandi. We are not even official here. But she baited me, and when we came home, I did a review on the document. And I said, this thing is going to be useless in the long term, because peers cannot hold each other to account. Now, we've had a spate of coups, because the peer review, I understand that it was useless when I was premier, because we had to contribute to the review of this country. I understood it very well, because which president of Africa, in Africa, is going to tell the neighbor, could you stop oppressing your women, stop oppressing this, stop poverty, stop stealing? They can't do that. They can't do that. And yet it got me into serious trouble. Because Mandisa, the only person I gave a copy for my critique of the peer review, wailika sana. Dangene nkingeni sana. And that is why I ran away from National Parliament, Monokuti, back home to the Northwest, and that's how I became the speaker there, because I'm saying kinging. But why Lika? Because this couldn't just be a discussion between us. And I still insist, there would not have been this spate of coups across Africa had, when we said, this measure is not enough. Put something in where you can actually help people who are in a state that is being monopolized and being overridden by one man. Because women don't oppress. We have never been given enough power to oppress other human beings. So I would say, egameni lika Mandisa, masiqhubeke again. We've tried Tinabanye. We've opened up the defenses. We've influenced even the other countries to open up the space for women. And when Rwanda was being praised at some point, I just said, but Rwanda is a revolving door of women. There isn't a woman who can ever challenge to be a president because it's a revolving door. And the first two groups, I knew them all because I was frequently in Rwanda helping build. It was a revolving door. You become minister, Tontoni tomorrow. Next 3 months, uyasuka uyalana. The next time uyasuso latlala abroad as an ambassador, they would never actually be able to run a state. But the statistics looked good. Even South Africa, Rwanda. The difference was that Tina, we got the chance to make mistake, learn from them, to build organizations, fail, restart again, count to the people. So if there is anything that Mandisa was insisting on, was let's build communities that not only are respected, but respect themselves. Let's build children who respect. Let's build able human beings who work. Let us build people who worry about other people. Ndamthukumamaku during COVID. Because I see on TV that she's busy dishing out. So I scream at her, Uti Tandi, uhlele endlini yakho. Uti labo gogo laba badle ntoni because there is nothing. I'm distributing food. And I said, Mandi, you can't take that risk. Uti ngubani ufuneka athathe i-risk. Now that is the leadership of women we want. To lead, phambili, not a mover. To tell it as it is. To challenge the odds not only for yourself but for the others. To remind us every time we go wrong of why we started fighting and why we should continue to keep the straight and the narrow. And to tell our young women, hey, hlalani esikolweni. Hlalani esikolweni. Be qualified to take over this country. Isikole lesi is not just the universities, bantabam. Isikolo lesi is also about the lessons of life. I want to conclude, Ella, I don't know whether we were with you, just to prove how Mandisa would get you into things international. We are at Unga. And we learned that Malcolm X Street is going to be renamed. And the African Americans say to Mandisa through Queen Mother, nihleli lapo e-UN. There is a night march. The night march was not just about the change of name, Yeka Malcolm X Street. It was also because these African Americans, having stayed in their houses, you can't own land forever in America. There's about 99 years. So most of the families had not been keeping up. So the white people were taking these houses. Homelessness amongst the black people in Harlem was increasing. It was the reversal of everything. And so when the people of Harlem marched that night, we joined them. We joined them because we knew the pain of being homeless. We knew the pain of being denigrated in your country of birth. And they were going through it for the second round. I can just hope that we will continue with the international solidarity in the name of Mandisa. I can only hope that our girls will be groomed and that this legacy Mandisa will someday actually even end up in a school. Just to make sure that there is consensus amongst us as women, consensus amongst the genders. She led. Even as the Women's League, Umbatabile was doing a good thing about bringing in all the genders into the women's league, but wayethulile uMandisa did it openly in Ilitha Labantu. That is how we build nations. That is how we grow healthy children. That is how we create respect for each color, each gender. Ngiyabonga.
I don't think it's weird at all. Can we do another round of applause? Colleagues, I have managed to secure our speaker for about 15 more minutes. So I want to open up the floor for some questions. But we only have a short period of time, so keep the questions short and to the point. And I'll take a round of 3 questions. Is that fine? Is that round of 3 questions? So I've got 1, 2, 3. So first the woman behind you, then we'll move across, and then come to you, sir. Thank you so much. Do we have a microphone? Okay, we'll use this one.
Thank you. I don't have a question, I have a comment. Mom, I want to thank you and Mandisa. I am what I am today because of women like you. The Beijing 2003, I will never forget. You, Mandisa, and Batabele. I was the rascal. Oh, here there's somebody say always. Somebody asked me in the week, are you a tokolos? Because you know everything, even if you're not there. I said, my bro, I was trained by women to be intelligent. So you don't need to be in the space, but you need to know how to occupy and build. And today, I want to salute the women that built me. Here are some people in the room that know when I walk in with authority. Because that is how I've been trained. You don't need to be a professor to take authority. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry, colleagues, I forgot to ask, please introduce yourself when you make your comment. We'll come back to you just to introduce. For those who don't know you in the room, because I think they all do.
Thank you. I'm Valdila de Vries. I've known Mandisa since the launch of Elita. We have a joke that we've shared that happened at the launch, and we always laugh about it. My question is, you know, the UN has honored Sis Mandisa when they heard of her demise. And yet this country hasn't. And that's the question I'd like to ask. You know, and there was nominations. I'll share it with the House. There was more than one nomination. and more than once. And this country has not honored her with the Presidential Award. When I researched the Presidential Award, I went down the list to find out, what made the president give awards to whichever people in whichever category. And I was shocked, and I must first declare that I'm a very ardent rugby player. I mean supporter, not a player. And I don't miss a single match, I can tell you that. But I was shocked when I went through the list to see that a young man like Siya Kolisi was given a presidential award. I'm not taking anything away from him, but if you make the comparison of contribution that Sis Mandisa did, compared and over the amount of 37, 38 years, if not more, compared to a rising star of a few years, it boggles my mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. The side to the front. Thank you.
Let me take this opportunity to greet everyone and our honorable speakers. My name is Yonela Mswangela and I work for an organization called Africa Unite. I think the question I want to ask is that young people are asking themselves here in South Africa and across the continent, what is to be done? What is to be done about the situation that is facing women, not only here in South Africa, but women across the continent. We have a lot of women who have become migrant as a consequence of issues taking place in other countries. And young people are asking themselves because there are issues taking place in the continent which determine or which give us an idea that Africa is not yet liberated, neither is it going closer or fast enough towards the unity that it does. And we're asking this because we've seen what happened in Mozambique. We're looking at what is happening in Madagascar, what is happening in Malawi, in Tanzania, and all these things. And because part of the challenge, young people are faced with an overload of information and left without knowing which is to be true and which is not true.
Thank you so much, colleagues. We're going to give our honorable speaker a chance to respond.
Can I start with the last one? What is to be done? I think we must go back to looking at the mess that if you take each and every country, let's just start with SADC. Until you unite countries that see themselves as United Nations, that prioritize their national objectives, that prioritize the future of their children, we are going to be in this mess. And obviously, the children and the women will always be the most affected. It is also up to the women of these countries to stand up and be counted. I have always asked, I deliberately said I was one, in fact, when Novo Katengo was started, there were two women who were given ranks. One was your own. Utandi, she was killed, she was from MK. She was a platoon commander. And the only commissar was myself. And we had to battle to show the men that we were as capable and sometimes even more. So I have always been wondering why we are not standing up to that as women. We help bring down the value of women ourselves. Now, the bravest woman doctor who was in the military camps, it took us a pounding. It took years to convince the ANC to honor Dr. Nomava. It took years. She was brave. She was not militarily trained. Yet she stuck with us in those military bases like nothing. It took blackmailing the ANC ukuthi sizaphumela ngaphandle sithethe ukuthi amongst the women you see no value. But you know what they do is that they will select amongst us those that will serve, so that it is the true ones who actually show exception do not emerge. So maybe what we need to do is make sure that we close the gaps as women, make sure that we are all at an par, make sure that we do what we did during the negotiations in this country, bring all of us together. I think Masitetinyani, but there's a time when we even put igama lika Mandisa for an ambassadorial post. Mandisa was just too powerful for other people, Makaba. There can be no other reason why you would see value and not acknowledge it. It is because you are threatening. It is because Masim Shafte Simbegela. But we will persist. I think we must deliberately flood the nomination Kamandisa. And we must ask why. And if we must come out with a different category for the nominations, let us do so. But we can tell you, some of us, we are still aching. We are still feeling very bad. We're not going to let igama lika Mandisa ukuthi linyamalale. Not from the history of the women of this country. Just as the name Ikamam Goi is Okubega, we will continue to make sure that Mandisa's legacy lives on. The last one was, the first one, I'm not sure I understood the question. Yeah. But I think what we need to do is build, challenge. If we need to create more categories, let us do so. But build solid leaders. I fought Novatabile at some point, and I said, you had 3 women. We should have had a conference to discuss ANC. But I will remember when Madiba came with the Indian option. Why did he turn? Because he had even bullied me when I was in jail. Seen a hunger strike to stop, and I defied. And some defier, oh, Madiba ngit, if we Indian option, which was going to give him latitude to nominate and just go to conference and present an NEC. And we said, this nominator as the speaker on behalf of the Women's League in that meeting, dinga consultant ukuthi awusozitholele leyo data. Because if we once allow you to pick and choose the leadership of this movement, we are gone. But in fact, what has been happening is more or less that. Because the slate means somebody sits down and decides. The slate means I eliminate challenge. And maybe it is time women started taking the challenge and standing up. And sometimes when a young woman emerges, who's strong, who's coming kakuhle, they are diverted by being put in a position where that potential cannot be developed further. And so sometimes women, know that they don't like you. They are eliminating future challenge. So we need to start looking at new strategies of growing the power of women. Making sure that that power of women does not just prioritize women, it prioritizes the South African nation.
Okay, colleagues, that is actually all we have time for. That was about 15 minutes. There are 3 more minutes, but I don't know if anybody can. Oh, there's so many hands. But I think that we do have lunch planned for after. We do have lunch, and there will be some time. Honorable Speaker, will you be with us through lunchtime? Yeah, but you are our honored speaker. No. Please, allow us the pleasure. But will you be here through lunchtime? Will we be able to take a? Yes, there will be time. There will be time. So I do ask you to entertain me in this, and I'd like to call up the chairperson of Ilitha Labantu to the board, who's going to give us a word of thanks, and then I invite you to join us for lunch.
I think this is better. Hi. Can I just say to the program director, to the University of Western Cape, to Bishop Tutu's Center of Religion and Social Justice, to our guests, thank you so much, everybody here. I think my very, very first foremost gratitude is going to go to our speaker, our sister, our Honorable Thandi Modise. Thandi, thank you so much for having been able to go through this. It was a very, very difficult moment for her. She so much wanted to be here to do this speech, but we know emotionally it's been a roller coaster. We're really proud of you because we know that it's not only about the understanding of Mandisa who she is. Mandisa was a true sister. She was everything to her. And to most of us who are here, I think for me, that's what is the most important thing. I don't think anyone for this first memorial lecture could have done any better. And I think, in a way, I can only just say thank you. And it's not just thank you for Ilitha Labantu, for all of us in this country, and for the family. If you could hear how you illuminated who Mandisa was and what she stood for, it's very, very clear that this short, powerful, vocal woman was someone that you'd never take for granted. If she couldn't be civil and say anything, she'd say any old how, unfiltered, she'll say it how it was. And she couldn't, the love that you're talking about is the love that she had for us, for everyone, and she couldn't bear any other grudge because what she wants to do, she'll say what she has to say, but she'll do what had to be done, no matter what the cost. And we still find it very difficult, to be honest with you, to talk about Mandisa. There's still cries. There's still laughter in between. Even our board meeting yesterday didn't end so well because it does turn quite emotional. And having said, I'll go then next to go to the family to say, the family of Mandisa, the children, Ella, Sia, Siku, Kevin, Sanele, Potumelo, thank you so much for having shared with us, Omandi. And we're really grateful. But for me, if you could hear what our speaker, I'm sorry I keep on calling them by name because they're young people of them like that. I always struggle to say honorable, so because they're sisters and because for me it's like what she kept on emphasizing was the family values
that Mandu stood for, the values about how she looked at children, what she expected of them, how she treated them. And those are the values that were unyielding. Mandu understands the issue of power, what power means. When you talk about power, people think that power is about power over somebody else. We think that power, even freedom, we don't understand what freedom is. Ideally, we don't understand. And so she lived it. You had to be closer to Mandy, not about what she said, but see how she lived. Some of the things she didn't say it, I always say to families, but what she did is what gave us an understanding of who Mandisa was. And to the family, we're so grateful. We're so, so grateful to never understand. And we're really proud of you, because you really stand for what Mandisa stood for and the Monakali family stood for. And there are many other family members who are here, and thank you so much, those who are here and those who are not here. And for Mandisa, it was never about blood, it was never about anything. Whoever was in Mandisa's life was Mandisa's family, in the real sense of the word. She never did anything half-heartedly. And you can see even the people around there, and our speaker demonstrated that. But I think the visionaries of this particular idea of a lecture, inaugural lecture, we've got O.N. Janyani. I think he was the first chairperson, I think of. He's here, he's leaving us as a board member. Oh my goodness, every board meeting say, Mandisa, we need to have an inaugural lecture. Myself, no. Do you see how she was fighting? She could have stood up and stopped you. That's who Mandisa was. Why can't they stop talking? And that's a struggle that we had. And it's happening, ON. And the prayers of our board members, the prayers, I know Mrotubu is here. You could see that the flights here, Mandisa believed in prayer. And we believed in prayer. ON would pray the whole day. And Mandisa would be saying, ON now, manegelo tandasa. Even complain to Mrs. Jan to say, we pray. But that's exactly, and that spirit, we thank you so much for those prayers. And we think, and I know that I have to come back to the visionary within here of the family, Ella, the ED, and the university. By the way, this is also an alma mater of Mandisa. Mandisa has studied here as well. So, in so many ways, we are quite excited. VC, thank you so much. And things happened difficult, but it was so easy. I mean, I could see some of the emails, but it was one of the most easiest things just because we're united in spirit and understand this is what needs to be done. And we're really grateful. And I think the way our ED contextualized it was just so beautiful. You could just see how like theory and practice, everything coming together, activism, everything. And I think this is what even our speaker has been able to demonstrate. And I think then when we have to look at the family, I've spoken about the family, and then we have to come back to, like I said, the university has been very instrumental in Mandisa's life, in everything that we do. I do know as well that our interaction with Little Abantu is ongoing, into the training even of social workers and all that. So we are really grateful. For us, this is almost like a second home in terms of like the theoretical, the intellectual debates, discussions that we have, and we think we feel quite good about that. But I think I'll just come back to everyone else who's been here. We are just really so grateful. Like I said, the program director, thank you so much. And I'd like to once again thank the academics, like I said, the university. We truly, and the young learners who are here, the questions that we've been having from here, some of them very exciting. I know that we continue to work on that. I rely on our speaker. I rely on our board members. And I rely on Little Abantu to continue to take the debate forward, and on UVC. Hopefully we'll have more discussions about the leadership of Africa and as women, what you need to be doing. And this for us is not an event, it's an ongoing sort of recognition of Mandisa's legacy. And I'd like to say, we hope to see you again, and I will formally close our event today. And I hope I have not left out our staff at the Little Abantu. We're really proud of you, and thank you so much. Let's continue the good fight of Mandisa and her spirit shall live forever. I'm tempted to say amen. But and Pula in. That's all I want to say. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Colleagues, please join us for lunch just outside. Thank you.